Gerry Young, welcome to Forged in Fire podcast. Great to have you here.
Very good to be here, James.
Gerry, we obviously know each other through Jiu-Jitsu. We met about 17, 18 years ago.
So,
yeah. Tell us what you do now.
Well, Jiu-Jitsu. I mean, primarily I run Hobart Martial Arts Academy in Tasmania, and that's my full-time gig. Run Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu classes and Muay Thai classes for big people and little people. And I'm also a manual therapist. I do work, remedial work on, injured people, help them with their injuries and so on, and their rehab. And the two of those combined sort of, make my day-to-day living, if you like.
So you can sort of make your own clients as well.
Yeah, well, sometimes you do, which is ideally not. Yeah. It is interesting though, because most of the time the clients that I tend to find in the therapy world are really not like the jiu-jitsu clients. I think a lot of jiu-jitsu clients would benefit from the kind of work I do, which is very, very gentle. It's actually jiu-jitsu. It's like less is more, very easy and gentle. But a lot of jiu-jitsu clients feel that jiu-jitsu students, I guess, need the hard. They want that hard treatment, whereas people who've had some kind of trauma, they're the ones I usually find, the ones that are more receptive to gentle. That's less is more approach.
Yeah. Well, you've given me a treatment, and I'm actually quite, I won't say surprised, because obviously I know that you know what you're doing, but it was interesting to see the response to something through a treatment that is probably the polar opposite of the treatment that I'm used to having with somebody like digging their knuckles and elbows in,
Well, I mean, for the people at home, what I do is called orthobionomy, which is very gentle work.
Yeah.
And, there's no secret, we're both jiu-jitsu people, we're martial artists. And to me, I've always found it a little bit amusing that a lot of jiu-jitsu people will associate their therapy with very hard treatments or very manipulative treatments, which kind of goes against the martial arts ethos, where you do a little to gain a lot. And so my goal in treatment essentially isn't to do the work for you, it's just to facilitate it.
Yeah.
So your body feels better because I helped it.
Yeah,
that's the premise, anyway.
Yeah,
of course, I'm only a ranked beginner at that sort of thing. There's much better people out there with that sort of work, but that's true with jiu-jitsu too.
Well, it's true with everything. There's always someone better, isn't it?
Absolutely. That's a good attitude.
So we'll talk about jiu-jitsu, obviously, but jiu-jitsu wasn't the beginning of your martial arts journey?
No. I mean, technically it started when I was 7. And that was a taekwondo starting, but that didn't last for more than a year. So that was there, that grounding was there, but I always wanted martial arts, but I never really started until I was around 17, 18. And a lot of dabbling here and there, but Hapkido was the one I mostly did.
Yeah.
Which, a lot of people know Aikido. And Hapkido has got a lot of similar moves, got the same parent art, but it also has striking in it. So it's sort of somewhere between a taekwondo, a an Aikido, a bit of judo, and some kickboxing style kicks. And, that's what I did a lot of, and it was very consuming for me.
In Hobart?
Yeah, I did that in Hobart. I did it in Launceston.
Yeah.
And I also did it in Sydney a little bit, like getting privates in Sydney when I flew up there, with a coach up there.
Yeah.
And it was a long time ago now, but it was a lot of fun, and I learned a lot of precision in technique.
Yeah.
And I learned to appreciate wrist locks, which is the frowned upon techniques. But yeah, I mean, it's good. Hapkido was a lot of fun, but it's not the only thing I did. I've dabbled in lots of arts around that.
Yeah,
certainly Taekwondo as well.
Yeah,
dabbled in judo a bit. I've dabbled in a couple of different karate forms over the time, and Muay Thai as well. All of those different arts all kind of contributed, but as far as, the only one I got a black belt in was Hapkido. The rest of them, this, yellow, pink, green, blue, red, whatever belts they happen to give, but quite a few. Like, it was probably the first 4 or so years of martial arts was primarily that stuff. Before I found Jiu-Jitsu.
How did you find Jiu-Jitsu?
A friend of mine showed me UFC VHSs, same as everyone else. I had a friend, and is his friend actually, but he was like, to me, he was a ninja. Like, he knew everything about there was to know about martial arts. He did kung fu, and you name it, he did it all. And he was a real encyclopedia, and he had UFC 1 to 5 on VHS. And I watched him. I went, it's funny, I didn't do what most people do, where they look at it and say, wow, this is just unbelievable, I have to learn it. There's this funny arrogance, but I looked at it and I said, yeah, that ground stuff would be a good accompaniment to the expertise that I thought I already had in striking and stand-up martial arts. So I should learn a bit of that. And so, I go looking around, and of course it's yellow pages in those days. There's no really internet. And there was a jiu-jitsu listing in the yellow pages. So I rang the guy, and he was north of Hobart, in the town of New Norfolk, which is where I was moved to, incidentally. But and he said to me in a voice that implied he'd had this inquiry before, that I know you're thinking of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and that's not what I do. You want to talk to Adam Newton and Clancy at the Bridgewater PCYC. That's where that was my next phone call. And I got him. So that's where I started.
And still, you'd still consider Adam to be your coach to this day.
I think it's important in martial arts. It's important to have long-term connections and relationships. And I mean, people like Adam, he's taught me a lot of jiu-jitsu, but he's also taught me a lot about being a father, about being a good man, and all those things. And that's what you want in a coach, ultimately, in my opinion.
And I believe that I actually saw a picture of Clancy in one of Paul Cale's kinetic fighting posts in the last couple of days. So, because he went off into the military, special forces or something.
I don't know specifically which companies he was serving in, but I know he served quite a few overseas deployments. And as far as I know, he's working privately in security now in Sydney. And I think he's involved with Paul Cale. I've seen a couple of videos myself too. And
I don't know the guy, but I know the name, and I saw this post, and I thought, oh, that's the guy from Tassie, because I think Chris Chalmers and John would come down here, and Clancy would have been one of the.
He was one of the earliest. Clancy was the second person in Tasmania to get a jiu-jitsu rank, the blue belt rank. Adam being first, and then Clancy second. And so Clancy was one of my 3 most formative coaches, Adam, Clancy, and Billy Burton, who's training with us now as well. And I mean, that's special days. First 3 blue belts in Tasmania. That's pretty special. Guys who started training in the 90s, whereas I was a year or so later than that coming along.
So you started training with Adam at PCYC? Yeah,
and at the time there was Clancy was there, Adam was there, and Pete Rogers, who's now a black belt, was there. And not many other people would still be training who were there. And at the time it was jiu-jitsu, and we wore a gi and we rolled, but we also did Muay Thai without a gi, and we kind of did everything. It was very much an MMA kind of focus. And I know Clancy was getting ready for a fight that fell through, I think, but it was, he was pretty fight prep when I got there. So my first lesson, I actually worked with Pete the whole time, and we, double leg takedown, side control, grind, smashed him out, and I was just that attitude I had when I watched those VHSs, that it was a good little supplement. I realised then,
there's more to it.
There's more to it than that. And so, so I really enjoyed it, and I trained there with them a couple of nights a week while I was also doing Aikido as well. But I wasn't there that long before I moved to Launceston because my relationship took me there at the time. So, then I was training up there. So it was like Adam was my first coach for a while until I was up. It was probably 2 years before I came back.
So who was up there? Who was in Launceston back then?
In those days, there was a few options. There was a guy called Arpad Tack, who now lives in Hobart. He was either the first or equal first blue belt up there. He was running a couple of days a week at the uni up there, and as well as that, there was a fella called Jim Fisher who was running the Wing Chun club at the PCYC, and he got his blue belt as well. So there was those two, but also didn't ever got a blue belt, but prior to that as well was a fellow called Paul Byrne, and he was like interesting guy. He's one of these, he ran a taekwondo club, but very much broke away from the traditional. He used to box, so he had different hands and stuff like that. And he was pretty switched on, and he was involved in Jiu-Jitsu from the 90s. Like I think the second time John came down here, John Mill came down here, he was at the seminar with you. And, so he straight away flew to Melbourne, stayed there for a couple of weeks and trained, and he did a lot of Jiu-Jitsu, and I ended up training with him more than the others because he had 5 nights a week training. And we did Jiu-Jitsu, but we also did kickboxing and everything else. And it suited me to train with him most of the time. My first comp was one that he organised, and it must be like 2001 maybe, or something like around that time. And it was a 4-man division, round robin division. And I won one by Armour, one by Ezekiel, and then I walked into a triangle, and so I got a silver. It was a fun day. It was a long time ago. I imagine that's probably on VHS somewhere.
Maybe. I wonder if anybody's got something to play on.
That's right. That's the trouble.
So then you came back to Hobart?
So, once again, my relationship brought me back to Hobart, and, and I've lived in Hobart mostly ever since. But when I came back, at that time, Adam opened the gym, which I suppose via a lot of different iterations and generations is my gym, Hobart Martial Arts Academy. It's not the same location, not the same people, but it's sort of the same evolution. The story about grandfather's axe. You change the blade twice and the handle 3 times. I feel like that's the story of this club. And that gym wasn't Hobart Martial Arts Academy, it was Hobart Mixed Martial Arts Academy. And Adam opened that in conjunction with Clancy and Billy, and they had a location, full-time location in the city, right in the corner of Liverpool, Elizabeth Street, right in town. And three classes a night, 5 days a week, lunchtime classes. And so I came straight in there, and I got on the unlimited membership, and just like train all I can. And
so you're working Centrelink there?
I was working at Qantas at the time. I was working in Qantas's call centre. It's the first job I could get upon moving back to Hobart. Which actually turned out to be pretty good because I flew to Geelong quite a bit to train. It would have been one of those trips that I met you. And staff travel had its real perks. It was like pretty cheap flights and stuff. So it was really good. And and so that was at that time, training a lot. I went to Geelong a bit, and I still only got my first or second white belt stripe at the time. It was pretty early, but things shifted and things changed, which were beyond my sphere. But that gym ended up shutting, so we trained dribs and drabs. And I ended up taking on a teaching role in a Muay Thai gym that was in a northern suburb of Hobart, wanting Jiu-Jitsu. And And that's when I sort of formally started training with John as a student of his.
Yeah.
And I've been coaching ever since then. So I started jiu-jitsu coaching as a white belt, which not something that happens unless you're in like a kind of an outlying area in some ways, or if you're the first. John did probably, you know. Like,
was Adam coaching anywhere at the time, or did he just having a bit of a?
He had a break. I think he had very young kids at the time, and
yeah.
He was very hands-on as a parent, and so and so between me running those classes and Pete was running classes at the PCYC, and we kept it going. And
Pete Rogers,
Pete Rogers was, and Pete Rogers and I worked together a fair bit. We ended up having another location which grew, and then Adam came back, and we handed it back over to Adam, and he grew it. And, so it's like it's always been this like evolution.
It is very much like grandfather's axe.
It is very much like and but throughout all of that, Adam's always been the mentor to me. And it's kind of funny, and you might appreciate this, but a lot of my students, even my purple belts and not brown belts, but even my purple belts, haven't necessarily met Adam necessarily, or don't necessarily know him that well. Which is, of course, they haven't. They train with me. But to me, it seems ludicrous that you would not know him. Yeah, because he's the
godfather of Tasmanian Jiu-Jitsu.
He's the man behind it all. Obviously, there's plenty of people who put a lot of work in, but he's the guy. He was the first blue, purple, brown, black. Yeah, and that's a big thing. So, and he's still a handful. No, he's I think maybe 10 or so years older than me, and he's still a handful. Even if I outweigh him a bit, he still gives me a hard time. Yeah, he's an absolute delight to roll with, and real precision.
Precision. Just when you think you passed, he switch
it and he strangles you. Yeah, it's wonderful. But that's the beauty of jiu-jitsu, is it's like jiu-jitsu is not magic, and jiu-jitsu is not an unbeatable thing. It's a skill set, and every skill set you can refine and refine and refine and refine and refine, and that's what he's done. Yeah, no, he's very good. So then other people got involved with that gym as well, or was that the beginning of HTC? Yeah, that's right. So HTC, which is a really good big gym in Hobart, started as an amalgamation of that gym. Yeah, and there's a really good fighter from Hobart called Priscus, who had his own students and his own setup. And they amalgamated and made I guess it was a similar idea to that original Hobart Mixed Martial Arts Academy, but only more modern, better, and at the right time. MMA was booming at the time, and it was huge, and so that was Adam and Priscus were running that. But of course, Pete was there, I was there, we're all teaching classes, we're all on board with it. And that went along in that way for, I think, about 3 years. Yeah. And then the business separated. And so, Adam and I and some others started training elsewhere, separately. Because that business went round its course and finished. And now that business is also a bit like the axe with many lives, because it's still going strong under a different evolution of ownership. Totally. And, which is not an uncommon story, I suppose, across Australia when you think about some of the gyms, which is great. More gyms, the better, in my opinion. Anyway, we went off and started training, and where we started training is where we are now. Okay. And that evolved into martial arts academy as is, which, it evolved into that through, it's just more, we grew and grew and grew. Yeah. When I left my full-time employment, it became my full-time employment. Yeah. But it was a slow process to get to that. Yeah. It was the process. It was my journey from brown belt to black belt happened there. And it's a nice story, really, because it's it's sort of like you went there with Adam, started that gym up. Yeah. And then sort of Adam's moved away to Sorel and started Sorel Martial Arts Academy, and you've sort of inherited your coach's share of the gym, who's still your coach, and it's nice history. I think it's good, and it was only a month or so ago, Adam taught a class for us at the gym, and then a month or so after that, I taught one for him, and we hope to keep that tradition going because we're still, still really have that relationship together. Which is really great. I think.
No, it's a good team. I think obviously because you guys put competitions on.
Yeah, that's right. And that's the other thing I guess we've done here is that. I mean, we're not the only people in Tasmania to have run competitions. A lot of people have. But Tasmania is a tricky market. It's not a giant market. It's not huge. And Tasmanians we don't tend to like to be told what to do, as consumers.
Yeah.
And so it's a little hard for some of the bigger association competitions to run here. Just because of the cost involved in the memberships.
Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't mind if there was biggest federation, IBJJF competition in Tasmania. I would be happy. That's fine. I wouldn't probably do the work, but I'd be happy to have it here.
Yeah, it's probably inevitable at some stage.
My concern with that sort of things generally is will people pay the membership fees and the entry fees and whatnot? But if they do, that's fantastic. However, Adam and I have recognised that the lack of competitions here isn't conducive to growing good high-level competitors in a small population base. And so we've ran competitions, and Adam and I together under the current iteration have ran about probably a dozen, probably. I don't know exactly. And prior to that, plenty more under different iterations, but with different people too. There's a lot of good people in Tasmania contributing to these. Yeah. But these competitions we're running now are under that round robin format, which is a lot more work for the organiser and a lot less return. There's a lot less money in it for the organiser, and there's a lot more work. It's a hell of a lot of work. But what it means is that all of our students and any students who enter from any gym, because they all from all gyms can enter those students get the most possible experience they can. Because if you work on a knockout system, then only the best person gets more than one match, which means only the best guy gets more experience. So it's exponentially harder for someone who's not as skillful to get the experience in. I've never understood the logic of that. Maybe for the championships, sure. But as far as building experience, round robin makes so much more sense to me. Even though it's a lot of late nights writing draws and putting the work in, and it's a lot of work. I mean, last one I refereed 122 matches in the day, and that's what I remember recording that. That's a big day of refereeing,
I think I refereed one match so you could go to the toilet.
Yeah, and I appreciate it. I really appreciate it. And someone bought me a coffee. Yeah. That was amazing.
Yeah, I think that round robin too, even for like old guys like myself, it means that I don't get put out in the first. Well, I don't get put out in the first round by a young gun like Tyson Reed, and and that's my day done. And I get to have another match, and
that's a good thing. I mean, if you paid $100 or so to enter on top of the however much it is nowadays to be a member of that association, and then you have one match where you get beaten quick smart. My first black belt match was at the IBJJF Pampax, and so what that means is, how much is it to enter that? Like at least 100 US, plus obviously being a member of it, plus a hotel, plus flights, plus everything else. So it's a big deal to go there.
It's crazy.
And I think it took 57 seconds for me to get tapped by Fabio Caleb. Yeah. And that doesn't surprise me. He's a legend. He's awesome.
Yeah.
But that's a pretty expensive 57 seconds. But, and I didn't get another go. So it's and I'm not complaining about that. That's how and that's actually it's the premier comp. So that's probably fair that it should be that way. Yeah. But more opportunities at the local level that are.
Yeah, I think around, like, especially somewhere like Tasmania, that's, maybe, I guess I wouldn't say that Jiu-Jitsu here is in its infancy, because it's not. It's quite a mature market now, but it's still growing. It still doesn't have anywhere near probably the numbers of the mainland. So it's, having a round robin encourages people to compete.
And I mean, I'd love more more events. I'd love more things going on. It's one of those things. I don't want to do everything. I do a lot of things, but I don't do a lot of things because I feel like it should be me. I do a lot of things because I feel like someone has to.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I mean, I don't. You just don't know, do you? If you don't run the comps, would somebody else run a comp, or would there just be a void there and there's no jiu-jitsu competition in Tasmania? You just don't know, really.
There has been voids. You know, I mean, putting aside the COVID time, it's a pretty hard time. But putting that aside, you know, there has been voids. There are a couple of years with no comps, so we start running them. You know, let me don't for a while because we're busy or whatever. And you know, that happens. And it's not like we're the only people. Like, certainly there's been the a few AFBJJ comps over the years. Like, it was for a while there was 2 a year. And then there was 1 a year for a bit. And there's certainly, I couldn't tell you names. I don't remember the names of the events, but there's been 1 or 2 other ones as well that I can think of. And you know, I've competed in some and I've refereed some, and like it's to me it's just about supporting. You know, there was Ross from Queensland did his lockdown. The lockdown cage grappling events down here. Oh yeah, I think he ran 2 down here. And you know, I went and refereed most of those. Didn't referee them all. Like Thomas Churchill came down to do as well. And they were fun. It's pretty hard to run for a Queensland-based organisation to run things here, but they had to go. And I was supportive of that too, because why wouldn't you be supportive? It's our sport. You know, and our community, more to the point.
I mean, maybe one day, once there are a few more numbers, you know, there'll be hopefully something similar to what the circuit that Daniel Lima and Geordie Lavis McBain run in Queensland, which is
that's incredible.
I mean, they've got the Brisbane Open, the Gold Coast Open, the Southeast Queensland Open. There's a bunch of comps that there's pretty much a comp every couple of months.
Well, the thing is, it's all about economics. There's 5 million people in Queensland, and as far as I know, about 5 million.
The Gold Coast is, I mean, there must be 50 jiu-jitsu clubs on the Gold Coast.
Easily, Whereas Tasmania, the whole place has 500,000 people. You know, I have heard people from, you know, at different times in my life with different business interests and different things saying, I could come to Hobart and do this. And I say, you could certainly try, but it's not the same as doing it in Melbourne or Sydney. There's not enough people. You know, like all of Greater Hobart is a reasonably minor suburb of Melbourne. You know, it's
the same size as Geelong.
That's right. I mean, and Geelong doesn't have 47 jiu-jitsu gyms and a massive
maybe 4 jiu-jitsu clubs. There's probably twice as many jiu-jitsu clubs in Hobart as there is in Geelong.
Actually. That's right. I mean, Geelong's got good jiu-jitsu, there's no doubt. But, you know, you don't see 10 jiu-jitsu tournaments a year in Geelong.
No. Geelong's obviously got John Will, Peter Van, Dan Cherubin, and Grady's got a club under John, and there's
possibly others.
Might be another. I think there might be another club in Geelong somewhere. But that's maybe 5 or 6, whereas Hobart now's probably got 10.
Yeah, I'd say at least 10. Because there's even a few small ones. There's different size gyms around. I mean, it's good. But the thing is, I mean, we don't. Look, everyone's got their own motivations for being involved in martial arts, but for me, you know, it's a great way to make a living. But it's also something I've always been passionate about. I love martial arts. But I also get to do something meaningful, and it's a useful tool for me to work with people, particularly kids. And that's another reason why the reason of doing these tournaments in order to give opportunity is why. I mean, that's like I don't make a majority of my profit from kids classes, which a lot of gyms do. But I do my best to help kids develop and grow.
I think kids teaching kids is. I think I had a mixed relationship with teaching kids, in that it can be the most satisfying and the most frustrating pursuit on the planet, I think. But it's when you see kids, you know, sometimes you watch kids that haven't had all their natural movement trained out of them. Doing jiu-jitsu. Some are amazing. Some of the things that they can.
Most of them are better than me. I mean, and I think that's you get them young enough, you can do that stuff.
Yeah.
But look, I get the kids for 45 minutes twice a week. That's how long I get them for. And I just treat them like my kids in that time. That's the reality. That's what I do, you know. And it doesn't matter whether it's a big night and there's, 25 kids in the class, or whether there's only, 6 because it's like the school holidays. Doesn't matter. Same amount of energy into them as you would,
Yeah, totally.
Same expectation, same, behavioural standards. Always create a situation where they can succeed. Never prevent success, because that's ludicrous.
Yeah.
I understand that.
And it's nice to see in your adult classes now. There's a couple of, well, they're not really kids anymore, but young men, teenage boys who have come up through your kids' classes that are.
Oh, and that's really special to me, because I suppose actually, there's probably some relevance to this podcast in terms of that, because we get kids, we train them, particularly boys, until they're about 12.
Yeah.
And mostly you never see them again. And occasionally they come back when they're 18.
Yeah.
But the teen years is a very difficult time for kids, very disenfranchising at times.
Yep.
So if I manage to keep kids around at that time, I feel pretty good about it.
Yeah.
Because it means I haven't lost that contact and I lost that touch.
Yeah.
Because, I don't know, there's a lot of pressures, a lot of life. And it seems like the difficulties and the pressures that affect adult people, men and women, but any adults, but it seems like those things are already starting with the teens. And so whatever the magic is, the combination of what we do, the combination of the perspective of the kids' parents, the combination of those particular kids' relationship to us, whatever it is that keeps them there is a real gift, because because it's reciprocal. Those kids are young. I say kids; those young men are developing into tomorrow's leaders in a really strong way. So it's great for them, but we're getting the benefit of that relationship, because we grow. We grow as leaders too. Leaders need to have someone to lead, and they need to have someone to challenge them to be the people that they're trying to be.
Yeah, and it's nice to see a couple of them that obviously you've got 2 boys who come up through your kids' class and now like assistant coaches in your kids' class.
Yeah, that's right. And
training in the adults' class.
And it's funny because from a coaching perspective, they train in the adults classes, so they learn their jiu-jitsu there.
Yeah.
But they probably learn more of the refinement of their jiu-jitsu with the kids, because, there's might be 4 coaches in a kids class, and I just say to them, look, I can't deal with those 2. You deal with those 2 kids. And they say, well, what are they doing wrong? And I say, well, work it out.
Yeah.
And work out what's happening wrong. And the kids all of a sudden, these guys, the Oscar and Joe, they've been doing this for probably 12 months.
Yeah.
And the first time they're, I don't know, it's a bit nervous, but now they're, like they just can see the mechanics in a much more relevant way,
Yeah, it's nice to see that. It's interesting watching the dynamic of, of them being sort of students in the kids' class, but they're assistant coaches in the kids' class, and they come into the adults' class, and I love it when they line up and all the white belts have to go on the other side of them, because they're, but then they're treated by all the adults, as adults. They're not treated any differently in the adult class. And
you see, if you put a 12-year-old in a class full of 4-year-olds, no, that's not fair. 12-year-old in a class full of 7 or 8-year-olds, you're probably going to get that 12-year-old behaving down. But you put that 12-year-old in a class of 20-year-olds, and you're going to get them behaving up. They're doing their best to kind of grow. Like you can't. Where's a really clumsy metaphor? I don't know. A tree won't grow if it's got a roof over it. Yeah, that's pretty clumsy.
Yeah, that'll do. Yeah, but no, it's really nice to see that dynamic.
Absolutely.
So I'm going to backtrack now.
Yeah,
so you started training in the city. You were working for Qantas. You had other like daytime jobs, but you obviously, like a lot of martial artists, you did the bouncer thing for a while.
Yeah, I did that for a while.
How was that?
bouncing was funny for me. Like I did it for a few years. That was around purple belt for me.
Yeah.
It was an interesting one because most of the time it was reasonably easy.
Yeah.
And I got kind of asked to do that job in like a management-y type role to start with. Probably because I was a fair bit older than most of the staff. They wanted someone a bit more, I guess, mature perhaps. I don't know why they chose me, but that was interesting work. But what it was interesting about it was, you go back to Hapkido that I'd studied all those years. Yeah, hundreds of techniques, 200 techniques. Yeah, I knew them all, but I didn't have any confidence that I could do any of them in real life, which is the problem with martial arts that don't have that sparring. Yeah, it's not pressure tested. But then, I was a Jiu-Jitsu purple belt, so I knew what I was doing. Yeah. But all of a sudden, I'm in these altercations in the nightclub environment. Yeah. And I didn't always use Jiu-Jitsu concepts. I often used the Hapkido concepts, and they worked. And it's like I learned it without meaning to, almost, or actually, I wanted to talk about that. So that's something I had a bit of a mental note to have a chat about. Yeah. So, because before I started BJJ with John, I'd been doing sort of a hybrid form of Aiki Jiu-Jitsu. Yeah. And I've had a similar experience, although not really off the mat. So so a lot of the things that I trained doing Aiki Jiu-Jitsu, which probably a lot of the locks and things are probably very similar to Hapkido. Yeah. But when I would sort of pressure test them training as much as we did, which wasn't a lot back then, I didn't find them to be very effective. But it wasn't that the techniques weren't effective. I think the thing that Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu taught me is maybe more the control and the control. And so I've since found that an opportunity will come up and I'll do something that's maybe more Aiki Jiu-Jitsu based sort of technique or principle, but I can do it much better as somebody who's done 20 years of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Yeah. So I mean, truthfully, I think, if I'm honest, some people get too wrapped up in the magic and mythology. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And even Jiu-Jitsu, I hear it all the time. Yeah. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is really good for the police. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is really good for this or that. Yeah. The truth is, some of the techniques are quite useful and some potentially aren't so useful. But if you took the really useful Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu techniques for, say, a police officer and got them to just do cold repetitions over and over and over with no resistance and more importantly, no sparring or rolling, I don't think it will be any more useful than those Aikido things that I do or the Aiki Jiu-Jitsu that you did. And in fact, I'd go so far as to say it's the same thing. It's the same parent art. It's the same actual moves. Yeah. What makes Jiu-Jitsu different from everything else that I'd done before was the training was real. I had to work out how to do it on you when you didn't want to. And learning to do that, because the truth is, if you can do that, then you can probably have that inherent piece of skill, and you could take any technique out of any grab bag and use it. Yeah, like the idea that I remember being really. This is probably going to get me shot, to be honest, to say this, but I watched those VHS tapes of Hoist fighting in UFC, and Hoist crazy beats everyone. And then I see all these sort of advertisements coming around. This is what Jiu-Jitsu is. There's all these sort of techniques. I remember looking at it going, but that's the same as what we do in Hapkido, like identical techniques. Yeah. If anything clumsier, like not as good. And that's not what he did in the cage. Like, he didn't do that stuff in the cage. He fought in the cage with the sensitivity and presence of a person who knows how. And so that's not dissing anyone. This is saying that the stuff that happened in the cage and the stuff on the VHS is about, self-defense are different things, totally different. And I reckon people who can make those self-defense techniques work, it's because they roll. It's my opinion. But, I'm probably going to get shot, like I say, for saying that. So I'll be very careful.
Yeah, well, I think, everything I did prior to BJJ was compliant, with a compliant partner.
Compliance is the word. Yeah. Absolutely the word. Yeah. I mean, ironically, I feel like some of our jiu-jitsu practice for the last 20 years has been too non-compliant. And some of my MRIs and x-rays and stuff may be evidence to that. I think my body has paid a price that it probably didn't need to. And I feel like my students who are coming up now, up to blue belt, up to purple now, are probably not going to have the same level of wear and tear as I did, because I'm training them different. I'm trying to train them with non-compliance, but without competitiveness all the time. Trying to stop it being a competition and start it being a competitive learning environment. Still roll hard and still do all the things, but not learn a technique over here and then roll over here and try to make it work.
Yeah, well, I guess there was also, the level of instruction that students get in most gyms now is probably so much greater than most people got in the early days, simply by virtue of the fact that in a lot of cases, people didn't see their coach.
That's right.
So the coach would be, somewhere else, come to a seminar, learn a couple of techniques. And I would guess that even for guys like, like John Well would, travel to the US or travel to Brazil, learn some stuff, come back, and then that's all he had he had to work with.
Yeah. Well, that's
until he, go back and get some more. Whereas now, I mean, when I've been on your mat and there's been 4 black belts there.
Yeah. Well, that's, I mean, the depth of the knowledge is there. Also, the availability, like an 18-year-old now probably doesn't quite comprehend the idea that there wasn't more information available, because it's, because there always is more information available, and that's not always a good thing, but it is always there. I mean, so there's that, and I mean, like John was doing that, and Adam was getting what he got from John, or when he flew over to Geelong and came back and he got a few more moves. And it's interesting, I was thinking about it when you were talking then, going back to Paul Byrne, that guy in Launceston, because he was very early. And he didn't have a judo background, he didn't really have a rolling background. And his recollection was that John came and did a seminar and taught them X, Y, Z, whatever the techniques were for that seminar. And then on maybe the second trip, he set up a camera on a tripod and got on the mats, and he taught the curriculum, the 4 arm bars, the 4 sweeps, the basic blue belt curriculum. And so, like, Paul had that as a reference. But he said that when John would come, he'd say, right, this is your arm bars, this is whatever it is. And he says, I'll be back in 6 months and I want everyone here to have done 10,000 of those. And also saying things like, you're allowed to wrestle and roll, but only for the position. You can't go for the submission. And then after that, okay, now you can start adding submissions. And I mean, I've only heard that from Paul. I don't know if Paul has now said that, and that was before my time. But thinking about it, how do you get someone who's got no comprehension at all of the idea of rolling and get them to do it from a distance? It's pretty... that's another thing that's hard to understand, because most people now have seen it. They've watched the UFC. They've watched they probably said, I'm interested in jiu-jitsu. So they've gone on YouTube and watched a bunch of matches, so they know what it looks like. But those guys didn't know what it looked like. And also, it didn't look like that then. It's different too. And rolling was different then. I would say. So it's an interesting thing to think about, I think. Times change.
Oh, definitely. If you look at the competition jiu-jitsu now, it's very different to the competition jiu-jitsu
totally different
20 years ago.
I mean, you can still recognise it as the same sport.
Totally.
But it's just, there's more going on. So that's interesting, I think.
So, I mean, like me, your martial arts has been like a constant thread for many years.
Like, I did it I did taekwondo when I was 7 for a while.
Yeah.
While there was access, there was access to a coach at that time. But I mean, we didn't do a lot of extracurricular stuff in my family. There was a lot of kids and not much money, so we did a lot of extracurricular. And I'm not at all sporty minded. Truthfully, if you ask my parents what I was like when I was a little kid, I wanted to be outside in the paddock, running around, getting in the bush, being in nature. That's all I wanted was nature, animals, insects. That's all I cared about. But I also asked my parents, and they say, "Yep, all you ever wanted was karate," because that was the word. It was obviously after the Karate Kid movies, but I'm enjoying, by the way, reliving that through the Cobra Kai series with my kids.
Oh, that's awesome! That's
it's really kind of fun. But it's sort of the martial arts was always there, even though I trained when I was little, and I didn't train again till kind of the end of my school era. But I always wanted it; it was always there. And if I could buy a copy of Blitz magazine, or if I could watch like a movie and imitate, I remember watching Bloodsport and trying to copy all the moves and everything. Like whatever it is, like I was doing that the whole time. But it was never, that's not training.
No,
I thought it was, but it wasn't.
Yeah. So I honestly believe that martial arts has helped me get through a hell of a lot of difficult stuff in my life, from a number of aspects. One, it's been something to focus on when life's been shit. But I guess it's the what's the word? It's hardens. I wouldn't say hardens you up, but I think it just makes you able to withstand jiu-jitsu anyway. Makes you withstand pressure. Sort of.
Well, yeah, it does. It makes you withstand pressure, but there's a deeper layer to that that perhaps some people don't recognise, is it teaches you to use your body in a way that the pressure is lessened. If you're sitting on me and crushing me and I twist the wrong way, it's worse. If I twist the right way, it's better.
Yeah.
So you learn to be physically resilient, but also physically intelligent.
Yeah, resilience is the word I was looking for.
Yeah, and but there's it's not just about banging your head against a wall until it doesn't hurt anymore. It's about learning to not do that. I mean, we all face our challenges in life, some very emotional times, and very difficult times, and some more than others, and we all have that. And it's never about comparing, you to me or me to him. We all have our own thing.
Yeah.
But if we're not learning lessons in our jiu-jitsu, we're probably not getting everything out of it that we could. And that's true of any martial art,
Yeah.
Because that resilience is important. The patience is important. It doesn't mean to say everyone who trains martial arts is perfect and it magically makes you a better person or whatever else. It doesn't. But it does give you some perspective, I hope.
Yeah, I think it gives you some perspective and maybe teaches you, I suppose, I don't know if this sounds corny, but, sometimes it teaches you to go with the flow.
Absolutely.
Sometimes it teaches you to be firm. Sometimes it teaches you to choose a different angle.
Yeah, that's right. There's always a way, I mean, even if it's not even talking about dealing with the worst life can throw at you. We've all had, like I say, all had bad things, but even if it's like, I like woodworking and carpentry and things like that. I enjoy that sort of thing as well. But and it doesn't happen very often, I've used most of the types of tools that exist now.
Yeah.
But if I picked up a tool that I didn't know how to use, I'd never used before, I'd have a better shot of knowing how to use it because of martial arts. Because I understand the same reason that I can use those Hapkido techniques. I understand how this machine works. I understand how this body works. I understand how the physics of movement. Even if I wasn't able to explain it in physics terms, I intrinsically understand it.
Yeah.
And that's another clumsy metaphor, but it's like sort of how we do things, I think.
Yeah. Well, yeah. You're right. I think, using that analogy of, using tools and that sort of thing, we understand that, the difference of different pressure or different application or different angles or, it is a, interesting sort of way of looking at it. Yeah.
It's like music. It's like anything, painting, anything that you do, any pursuit in life. There's a relevance there.
So you, or obviously you're not, you have other interests other than martial arts. So I know that you read a lot. You read a lot of like historical sort of stuff and pottery.
I haven't done as much of that in recent times as I have, but I have a pottery wheel. I've learned to throw pots and cups and things. It's one of those things. Every time I find something in life that I like, I generally find a coach or a teacher. And there's a couple of different people. There's Julie, who was a former colleague of mine in my public service career, but then left around the same time I left my job to run the gym. She went off to open her studio called Glazed and Confused, which is great.
That's an awesome name.
And and that's where I started to learn to throw. It was so much fun. And then and I have time to do as much of that as I did, but I still do it a bit. But I also discovered a teacher in Cygnet, south of Hobart, whose name's Ian Clare, and he's like the guy who did his apprenticeship when he was 15, and he's now in his 50s, and he is unbelievable. Just such a master. Anything that you could screw up, he could fix it without looking, because he could feel it and he could know. And there's some beauty in that. And so I've done a lot of private lessons with him. Students come to me for private one-on-one attention. I've got private attention up from him, and it's a lot of fun. I do enjoy ceramics. I wish that every day was 28 hours long, so I could.
That's the thing, isn't it? There's so much stuff to do, so many experiences to be had, and I've often had to make choices. I spent all my high school life being a musician. I played guitar and I played drums. I was in bands. The first one I went to Ballina was touring with a band. I've done all that sort of stuff. But I don't really have the time as much anymore. Although I'm working with my son on that. One of our purple belts, Vicky, who's since moved to Queensland. When she moved away, she said, "I've got this secondhand cheap drum kit that my daughter had for a while, and do you want it?" And I said, "My son does, and we're going to, before he can touch it, we're going to, pull the plastic red shells off it back to timber, and we're going to varnish it. We're going to make it beautiful, and then we're working on that. So at some point, he's going to have a shiny varnished drum kit. We're getting there, slowly, and so probably that's going to, because he wants to be a musician, wants to play drums. So I don't know what happens with me, but my kids are all musical. And I've got, my great grandmother was musical, and my son is amazing. But I sound like a cat that someone's trod on its tail if I try and sing. Well,
this particular son can sing, and it didn't come from me or his mum. So he can sing really well, really pitch as well, and it's beautiful.
Music seems. I was having this conversation. I was having this conversation with my son, I think last night, about the number of people I know that are musicians and martial artists. There's so many.
John Will made that point to me once. He's like really common. It's a really common thing, and it's about, and different martial arts too, which ones they are. But I think it's about creativity, and it's about physical expression. I think because that's what we do. We express an idea with our bodies. I think it's very primal, and music's primal. Martial arts.
That's true.
Really real.
I've got this. I mean, it's not my theory, but I subscribe to this idea that most cultures had wrestling as sort of as a male sort of rite of passage. Not nearly every culture, whether it be in Asia or Africa or Europe, England, most cultures had wrestling, and it's something that for the majority of the population, because most people don't wrestle, we're in the
minority.
We're in the minority, but I have this theory that it's something that is meant to be part of growing up. Part of the.
Do you? I don't know if have you heard of Stephen Badulf?
Yeah.
So he writes. He's a child psychologist, I believe, and he wrote books raising boys. I believe
that's
his
right.
more famous ones. He's written. His wife and him and someone have written raising girls and girls as well.
Yeah.
But when I have two sons, and when they were on the way, I like everything else I do, I try to learn as much as I could.
Yeah.
And I read his books, and he talked about wrestling, and he talked about why it's so important to roughhouse and wrestle around with, and like he said, boys in that book, but the truth is, it's kids.
Yeah, yeah.
And one of them was about, it's probably a childlike version of what you might call presence or mindfulness, I think. It's that I can be wrestling around and getting, because I'm a man and my 1-year-old kid is a 1-year-old kid, I'm in 100% control. But I can create an environment where it starts to get to that 1-year-old where they're starting to get a bit out of control. I'm really going hard and I'm trying, and I can then, as the adult, I can bring that back and say, no, that's enough now. Stop now. That's enough. We're playing the game, but there's a line here. And see that line? That's where it stopped. Let's try again now. And then, plus you get that tactile response stuff. You get a hug. There's all that learning stuff. And I don't actually remember anything else out of the book, except I do remember that.
I just have this thought, feeling, whatever, that for it to have been part of nearly every culture, then it's, there might be a more root reason for it, as in, in primitive cultures, the men's role was to protect the tribe, and so maybe wrestling was partially that, but I think it's also, I think it's that.
Well, I reckon before the idea of, say, before cultures and civilizations had evolved to the point of specialization of standing armies or defensive forces or whatever else, I suspect that life probably had more enough risk that everyone might have to fight at certain points. And, most people, when you start throwing punches at them close, will clinch, will grab, or they get knocked out. But clinch is instinctual. And the thing is, you see this teaching, if someone's in a bad position on the mat and they grab with their hands, because that's what hands are designed for, or evolved for, depending on perspective. You grab. And once you grab, so you contract here, and that's telling your nervous system, that's a contraction. I better work with this one. And all of a sudden, now my biceps working. Now my lats are working. And you're primed to do it all. And all of a sudden, even though it's not beneficial in that circumstance, in a wrestling sense, to be pulling the person down on you, it is instinctual. So the second that someone tries to hit me and I grab them, we're wrestling. The only thing missing is that I haven't learned how yet. I don't know how to wrestle. I reckon that's why every culture wrestles. I think our physiology is primed for it. Our physiology is, the muscles within a human body that are pulling and gripping muscles are the slower muscles, and the ones that are the pushing, extending, they're the explosive muscles. So I think that our body is kind of built for that. The same muscles you use for hanging from tree branches. It's the same thing. Like grab a hold of that person and squeeze them.
And I guess the other thing too is you look at other animals. Whether it's a bunch of puppies or kittens, or they wrestle with each other. Well, they play, don't they? So
and that's how they teach to hunt. Some of those animals. I heard someone say the other day that humans are ticklish as part of the same reason that those animals wrestle around. Humans are ticklish, so we play tickles with kids, because all the bits that are ticklish that you're learning to cover are your vital spots. Covering your neck, your armpit, the places where you would have
be vulnerable.
And I don't know if that's true or not, but I heard that and it sounded cool. So it is now.
It makes sense, doesn't it? So we'll just go with it. So outside of those things, pottery, martial arts, reading, anything else that you're thinking about getting into, or that's on the list, but you haven't done because there aren't 28 hours in the day?
Well, that's a hard one. I mean, I want to get back into music in a bigger way, but there aren't 28 hours a day. But I've committed that next year there'll be kind of at least an hour a week for that. However, you have to make that work because, as you know, running your own business, self-employment is hard. But starting on the 10th of January, I'm starting a full-time Bachelor of Health Science.
Oh, cool.
And I'm doing that. This is the beauty of our modern world with the internet. It's entirely online through Uni SA.
Yeah.
And that is, I'm hoping, a precursor to a Masters in Physio, which is, I think, the logical progression of the kind of work I do. You've seen my treatment room, and you've seen my weights and stuff at the gym.
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess in some ways you're doing physio. You are doing physio, but you're not not as good at it as the ones that know what they're doing. But not even necessarily not as good as
different.
But
different. The truth is, a lot of my clients I see for ongoing injury management or whatever it is, sometimes I see them on the table and sometimes I see them in the gym. And it depends on what they need at that point. And sometimes I start on the table and then we only work on with weights or with whatever the physical treatment requires. Yeah. And then after we've rehabbed, then we don't see them again. Yeah. And that's what we're aiming for. Send them back into the world and have them good. And I mean, I'm very mechanical. I'm very interested in anatomy, and I always kind of wanted to do physio, but it was never really easily available in Hobart. But mainly we've got COVID to thank for this. Like the advent of online interaction is so much higher since COVID started. So maybe that's kind of a pro. But I wouldn't want to say thank you, COVID, but maybe that is a pro that I can make this decision.
I think it's definitely kicked us into using some of the capability that we already had, but maybe we're reluctant to use because we are creatures of habit.
That's right.
So so obviously that's if you go through and do the masters. You're talking about a few years. Yeah,
I think full time I'm looking at 5 years and part time I'm looking at 10. I'm going to give it a red hot go full time, but I guess the first semester is going to give me some indications as to what I'm capable of and what I'm not, because lots of hours.
And you still got to run the gym.
Still got to run the gym. Still got to teach classes, and the thing is too, it's like it's not just teaching classes in the evening. I mean, I've got a couple of different high schools that I teach with. Sometimes it's just teaching PE, sometimes it's teaching kind of a component of their exercise science class. I've just had negotiations with one of our local colleges here to do stuff with them next year, and so there's plenty during the day, not to mention therapy clients and stuff. There's plenty of work that's on the go, and the trick is where you're sticking it all in manageable chunks. I think that's the
You were teaching Muay Thai at one of the schools? Taruna High.
Taruna High. It's an amazing school because how forward thinking. It's a thing kids like. Because
a lot of schools would be scared to put Muay Thai on on the curriculum or on as an elective.
But when you think about what I'm doing there, it's no different to what I'm doing at the gym. I'm teaching the kids Jiu-Jitsu, but I'm not really teaching them Jiu-Jitsu. I'm really just helping with their development, helping with their growth. I could be doing, an art class or a painting class or a music class and still imparting the same lessons. It's about the lessons. It's not about, what we're doing is a vehicle.
Yeah, it could be facilitated through all sorts of activities.
I mean, it's just, look, the truth is, when I think back to my school experience, lots of teachers I didn't get on so well with. Sometimes it was me and sometimes it was them. And it certainly would have been me plenty of the times. It was a bit different. Yeah. But there's a few that I look back on who were shining lights in my development. And they often were people who taught, not always, but often they were teaching their extracurricular outside sort of subjects. But the truth is, the ones I remember were the ones who used that teaching to develop me in other ways. I had a music teacher in grade 11 and 12 and contacted me after school finished, like when I was out of school, and said, can I come and join his band for the year and play with him and do weddings and stuff?
Oh, cool.
And it was cool. And he treated me like an adult, even at school. And he proved it once he left school. And the lessons I got from him were irreplaceable. Pretty amazing, really.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good stuff.
Yeah. I mean, there are some very special teachers.
And that's hopefully what I'm doing. I'm trying to.
Yeah.
Hope I am.
Yeah. Well, the culture of the gym suggests that you are. So.
Yeah. And it's okay if I'm not with every person too, because I think that's about like teacher-student relationship is key. If it's the wrong teacher for that student or the wrong student for that teacher, my hope is that people find the right one.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like that's I think that is important.
Yeah, and I think I think that's a good attitude to have when when students leave. I think when I first opened my Jiu-Jitsu academy in Ballina, which was 2010. I think with the first couple of students that stopped turning up, we took it pretty hard.
Oh yeah, it's emotional.
Yeah, and then eventually, you get to realise that you're not what they, you're obviously not what they need.
Yeah.
So,
and it might be you, or it might be the sport, or it might be the truth. The truth is that they're not. It's like some people say you can't have friends that are customers and vice versa.
Yeah.
But it's not really just as simple as customer or friend. It's also student. It's a weird place.
Yeah.
Because there's this weird little, like, there's definitely friendship. There's also respect.
Yeah.
There's also reciprocal teaching and learning.
Yeah.
But they're also a customer, and but then there's that student thing. If the student teacher thing dominates the customer bit, that's hard too, because it's all got to be an equal arrangement, I think, to work. Yeah, and it's a balancing act, because the environment changes, the situation changes, your life changes. You've got to. But I've had students come to me and say, I don't think I can train for X amount of time because studies got hectic, or because my husband lost his job, or because we've got a baby coming, and they say, can I can't train. And I say, I'd like you to. I say, what's the issue? It's usually money's usually the issue. And I say, look, if money wasn't an issue, would you train? And they're like, yeah, I would. And I say, okay, well, how about you give me 6 months and I'll give you 6 months. Yeah. I won't charge you for 6 months, but you stick at it. That sort of stuff, because it's not about being generous. It's about assisting that three-way kind of balance. Yeah. You can't do it everyone, of course. You run out of money, but you do your best.
Yeah, I did the same with with a few people, but and I think the other thing too is, I think it's sometimes we think, they just they just pay us with their money, but they also pay us with their time as well.
Absolutely. So, I've never considered students to pay for lessons.
No,
I don't think they do. Students pay to be part of the environment. Yeah, and the lessons happen in the environment. Yeah, I think that's really important. And the truth is, those students pay for that environment, and sometimes that environment is funding someone who hasn't got any money. Yeah, or sometimes that environment is about progressing some kids, or whatever it happens to be. And because it's a pretty magical world, a community is pretty magical. Yeah, and it's it's definitely is a community. I think it's a little bit tribal. I think it's and I guess the thing is, we talked about the ancient wrestling identity of people, but the tribal thing is an interesting one. I've seen that tendency in human beings to have their tribe and their people. I've seen that be terrifically beneficial, particularly to people who have, they've got trauma of some type or something to overcome. Yeah. I've seen it be so beneficial. I've also seen it be manipulated. Yeah, I think, like just in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, I think I've seen the tribalism, in some amazing ways, with, some incredible things that have happened with, people supporting people that are part of their team or their club or their tribe or whatever. I've seen it toxic. I've seen it being used, in
maybe not deliberately, but intimidating manner as well. I've got this recollection of being at I don't know if it was at the Vix or the Pan Pacs in the, I don't know, 2004, 2005, 2006, somewhere around then, and pretty much everybody checked in for this competition, and then the extreme jiu-jitsu team pretty much all arrived at the same time. So I don't know, maybe they'd met in the car park. They all had club t-shirts on with the X on, and they all came through the door together. And and it was like a bit of a, oh wow, they mean business. They were back then. They were very, very competitive. Competitive team, very tough team. I remember seeing some absolute wars between, like for example, I think George Soteropoulos against Rodney Ellis, and but yeah, they were a tough team, it was. If it was deliberate, it was very good. It was very well done. But yeah, the doors burst open. They all walked in. They were all wearing the same t-shirts, and it was like.
I think I've got some John Donahue VHSs at home somewhere.
Yeah,
but he put out VHSs on Jiu-Jitsu, and I was always trying to learn the latest thing. I think.
Yeah, they were a tough team. I remember being absolutely mauled by Paul Dallow, Ross's brother. Yeah. At I think that ADCC trials in 2005 or something. It's they were
tough guys.
Yeah, talking about using the tribe.
Well, and that's interesting, that the whole tribe thing. Like I've had, how many people have I taught in my life? I don't know. There's been something in I counted the waivers my gym has had signed. So it's an indication people have been in the gym once. Yeah. And there was 2,300 and something. Yeah. That was about 2 years ago. Yeah. So there's a lot of people have come in and out the door. Yeah. Obviously they don't all train here, but that's one thing. So a lot of people have crossed my path. Yeah. And some of those people have been through some terrible shit. Oh yeah. Yeah. And I've been through some too. And usually the environment has helped them, because that's the tribal nature of it used in the right way. Yeah. That's like I guess, if you and me wrestle for a few hours, and every time you arm lock me and I tap, you let me out of it, and then you show me what you did, there's some huge trust there, some camaraderie, some friendship there. Yeah. Like, I trust people that I roll with usually really well. Yeah. And I guess it's the same. And all of a sudden, it might be the student might be talking to me about what's going on, and that might help them, but it might not be me. The student might talk to you, or they might talk to old mate in the corner. But that really helps, because I don't know. We all have our own experiences, but to me, sometimes you end up in a place that's very isolated in your life. And I don't just mean isolated in a room. I mean isolated in here. When things go wrong, and I don't know if this is quite right or not, but particularly around relationship, like when you're in relationship and then you're not, because it depends on how you are in relationship. But if you're in relationship, and I've been through some pretty serious relationships, and I've had some serious ones end, I tend to feel like there's it's not just me. There's that entity doesn't exist. It's the us entity. Yeah. And then because half that entity goes, it all goes. Yeah. And I was sitting there a bit.
I can relate to that. Yeah.
Yeah, like in a lost room in my head, sort of. And I don't know, like some of the worst times I've had. I remember I had a relationship that ended a while back, and it was wonderful. It was great. Everything was good, and then it ended. And see, on the face of it, that's not a big a deal. But there was a period of time for about 4 weeks there where it was pretty hard for me. It was pretty dark and it was pretty hard. And the bizarre feeling is and at the time I had just started full-time self-employment.
Yeah.
Now, it doesn't mean I was working more in the gym. It just means I was working less elsewhere.
Yeah.
I stopped having a public service job.
Yeah.
And I was very alone because I didn't have, even though I didn't necessarily love everyone I worked with, good friends I did work with, but I didn't like them all.
Yeah.
But they were people.
Mm.
And I was very alone, and trying to work out where to from here stuff. It was very, every relationship breakup is hard.
Mm.
And I remember walking around just being numb, both physically and intellectually. I just wasn't aware of anything.
Mm.
I knew my schedule though. My phone beeps and says, "Hey, it's time to go teach the kids class." So I rock up to the gym to go teach the class, and I walk in and get on the mat, and it was gone.
Yeah,
it was gone, and I was me, and I was normal, and to the point that nobody knew except one student pulled me aside, but she was very intuitive, and she said, "What's going on? Something going on," and so. But that's a one person out of however many that picked it up. But it's amazing because it wasn't that for me, the tribal benefit wasn't that people came and
rallied around you.
It was the fact that they didn't need to. It was such a safe environment that I was able to just be there and just be real. And that's pretty real. I mean, but on the other hand, there's been times, and I don't want to go into all the he said, she said stuff, but there's times when jiu-jitsu has been either taken from me a little bit or damaged by, I guess in jiu-jitsu we call it politics, right? Like it's just some kind of clash or other. And that stuff has hurt so immensely because probably for the same reason. It's like you're taking away this huge part of me, Like even if I couldn't wrestle, it's still part of me.
I mean, I've experienced partners being resentful of my commitment to jiu-jitsu as if it takes away from, my commitment to them. Maybe did, maybe didn't, but I've definitely experienced that. But when things have gone pear-shaped, I'm pretty much the same. Once you walk in to the gym, put on your gi, tie your belt, step on the mat, there isn't anything else.
Well, and even as simple as because there was a time I had a full-time job. I was studying full-time and I was running the gym full-time, and that was pretty tough. And there was a time there I'd leave that job, and I didn't really like that job. It was hard. Emotionally hard to be in a place of mind. Leave that job, come to the gym. It wasn't even the gi. I took my shoes and socks off. Walked across the mat to the light switch, and I felt those mats under my feet. There it was, and that's huge. But the thing is, I don't understand why it's obviously something wrong in the relationship structure, I guess, because it shouldn't. Like the fact that I train jiu-jitsu, like my sons train with me a bit, but not so much because they're not, with me sometimes. But I am absolutely a better father for being involved in jiu-jitsu. And not that jiu-jitsu is the magic sauce either. Like I'm a better father for being a fuller man.
And and it can be for also for having that outlet, even things as simple as that. Having that outlet, having that way to express yourself, having that something that you have to be so present.
That's right.
That you can have some time away from things, which sometimes just allows you to come away. I can have a shitty day, or I've had something shitty go on. I don't really feel like going to train. You've seen it. I don't really feel like training. But I'll drag myself in. And the days that I drag myself in, the moment, as I said, you put the gi on, tie the belt, step on the mat, and then you're there for an hour, hour and a half, however long the class is, or the open mat, or whatever it is. Quite often, whatever it was that was doing my head in before I went and trained has lessened in You know, I'm not so stressed out about it anymore. It's just, you know.
Well, you know, I mean, I don't know if you've noticed this or not, but, you know, classes are starting and I stand at reception in front of the gym. People come in and I do my best to make eye contact and say hello.
Yeah.
And I can't promise to get everyone's name right because I'm a bit crap like that. But I try. But I try to make hello every time because I want to welcome people in.
Yeah.
You know, I think, and I mean, then again, though, you know, my sons are everything, right?
Yeah.
We were at the supermarket the other day and went to the deli and we're getting ham or whatever we're getting, you know, from the deli. And I watched, because I said to my youngest, he's 11 and he's been coming to the supermarket with me for a while, but I said, well, look, there's plenty of ham there. Say how much you want and say what it is and use your manners, you know. And so he says, can I please, you know? Yeah. But what I said to him, use your manners and order what you need to order. But I didn't tell him the thing that I used to tell him when he was little, is I said, make eye contact, smile, and genuinely wish the person a nice day. Yeah. Because it doesn't take any effort from you, but it makes their life a little bit less shit, you know, if it's, or it makes it good. Yeah. Yeah. And it's funny because he did that because I've trained him to. Yeah. And it's the same thing on the mat. If you come in with a shitty day, I hope it's better because I interacted with you, or, you know, and that's key, that stuff. Like it's really important because life is so easy to go wrong, and it's relatively easy to go right if you know, if you encourage it to. Yeah. Well, you know, I think that the gym, certainly I had a similar, you know, with my gym, you know, probably the thing I probably said the most in my kids' classes was at the end when we lined, because we used to line out exactly the same as you do, everybody shakes everybody's hand. Yeah. And I would be constantly saying, eye contact, eye contact, eye contact, and made sure that, you know, every kid learnt the benefit of looking at the person and shaking their hand, and you know, there's a lot in that. Eye contact is, you know, the first form of touch. You're not touching. Yeah. And like, I don't have to actually touch a person to make contact. No. Like whether it be intellectually like that, but even like, you know, sound probably in the wrong circles to talk about it, but even orally, you know, proprioception starts before you have physical contact. You know, you can know that wall's there before you touched it. Yeah. And if you practice, you can feel it. Yeah. Right. That stuff is real. And the connection starts it's like when you're walking down the road and you see your mate up ahead. Yeah. You're already having that interaction, because it's like you may as well be hugging already because it's already happening like that. The energy's there. And that's why one of the best things about what we do is there's so much positive benefit. And you know, you asked about bouncing before. Yeah. Something I learned and didn't realize I learned it until afterwards is that when you touch someone on the arm, that is a comfort place. Yeah. Like if you're upset and I just it's okay and touch you on the arm, that's comforting. Yeah. The first place I would touch someone if I needed to ask them to leave the pub was there. Yeah. Because just as often as not, it created if that person was already angry or already aggressive or wanted to fight, they got to fight anyway. Yeah. But often that just calmed it down. And it's funny that things like that, like where the energy is really, really key. And it's human wide. It's not individual wide. Yeah, I suspect that kids who are able to make non-aggressive eye contact are less likely to be bullied, picked on, assaulted. And ones who aren't able to make non-aggressive eye contact, ones who do make that eye contact, very likely received a lot of it, especially at a young age. Yeah. Because, I mean, there's no absolutes in this world, but behaviours of children are very often reciprocations of what their parents do. Because I watched a video about it the other night. Someone was doing a talk on individuality. I think it was now. But anyway, it was online, and I was talking about acceptance. Like as a little boy or a little girl, you want acceptance, and so you model a behaviour that you think is going to be liked, and therefore approved of. And often that means modelling what. Now, if you're my dad and you're really aggressive and you're making that aggressive eyes at me, I'm not going to make him back because that's I'll get growled at or whatever it is. But I'll do it to someone else. Because I've learned that's how you interact. And that's pretty hard to fix, depending on how old they are. But,
if you've learned that that's how you get your own way. And
that's right. I mean, like, it's kids need leadership, and what that leadership looks like has a massive impact on what they do, what their future is. Like most of my development, I think I'm very lucky about. I think I live a lot, and I'm trying to do the right things with my sons all the time. And a lot of it's good, but not all of it. But I'm trying. And mind you, on Saturday when you came to help us lay the mats on the new mats in the gym, which was the most exciting thing that's ever happened in Hobart. But my boys were there, and come the end of the day, that was a hot afternoon. We worked for 2.5 hours, and they didn't stop. Kept working, kept working, and I feel proud of that.
They did well.
Very
they were
impressive,
just as useful as everybody else.
Everything's good. And they flowed between tasks too, which I liked. Because we had one of our students, Luke, was there, and Luke's wife Nat was there, and little 1 or 2 year old Archie was there. And if Luke or Nat were looking after Archie, they weren't as able to do a physical job. And Evan recognised that, my 11-year-old, and so he played with Archie. And that was just as useful as.
Oh, totally.
It's such a team, and that's tribe. That's the tribe. Everyone in the tribe has a role, and it all works together.
Well, that whole thing, like that exercise of putting the mats down, that it could have taken twice as long. It just seemed to seamlessly,
Well, I think lack of ego helps that too. Teamwork.
That's true.
You can certainly get those things wrong. And there are people in my life who I love dearly who I would not have wanted there. Because those group jobs become a lot harder. My word, that was satisfying.
It's nice. Nice match.
It's really good.
It is and
I'm never going to pull them up again. No more pulling up the mats ever.
No.
Anyway, that's like, I don't know, it's just refreshing my mind, I guess. But it's cool. It's I love that community stuff. It's really good.
I mean, I have my Jiu-Jitsu club that I started up in Ballina, which had a couple of different iterations because I moved it. Well, because my ex-wife and I started CrossFit Ballina as well, and when we sold CrossFit, they needed all the space, so I had to move out of that. So I moved out of that space into another space, sort of in a different town. So I actually moved from Ballina to Gunnellabar, which is Lismore, and then back. And then I closed it down, and then just thought, no, maybe I still want to do this. So I ended up in Austinville. But the thing that was good about, I guess, all 3 Jiu-Jitsu locations and the CrossFit was the community stuff. It was just super powerful. I mean, when we had the CrossFit and Jiu-Jitsu together in Ballina, some of the amazing fundraisers that we ran for, local charity, and we did a big fundraiser for one of the local disability organisations. We also did a fundraiser for there were a lot of cops that trained in the gym, more so doing CrossFit than Jiu-Jitsu. There were a lot of cops there, and there was a I think his name was Sergeant Nixon, was a police officer somewhere in northern New South Wales that was killed on the job.
Oh, man.
So we did something, I think, to raise money for his family. Just everybody. It's just every time we did something that was for, recently a guy up in northern New South Wales who started as one of my students, and he's now a black belt up there, which he didn't get his black belt from me. He just trained with another team up there, but he recently had cancer, and a guy from a different gym who runs a gi company organised a fundraiser, so they made a special gi, sort of, you know, the Big George gi, and I think that's well supported. And you know, whenever someone's been whenever there's been a need, there's always been a group of people to, you know.
Well, I mean, and then the good thing about that is that often extends well beyond individual clubs and organisations too. You know, I've seen plenty of people around with, you know, sometimes you're in a different city or you see someone walking along and you see them wearing a hoodie and they've got a thick ear. And they go, where do you train? And, and also,
I've done that at airports and things. I'll see somebody there and I'll just look at somebody and I'll go, yep, you do jiu-jitsu? It's on many occasions, and sometimes it's the ears. Sometimes it'll be sometimes it's, you know, something fairly obvious like a t-shirt or something. But
well, sometimes they're hugging their wife, but they get the underhook. Like that's always a giveaway.
That's a giveaway. But there are all sorts of tells. But you know, obviously the ears are, you know. Although I do get a lot of people say to me, "Oh, did you play rugby? Or did you play rugby?"
Well, so you don't get that one here as much. I mean, there's definitely some good rugby clubs here. And I mean, a lot of fighters and some students and some other people I've been involved with came from Glenorchy Stags. Like that's like known for it. I've trained people from there, and I've trained with people from there. People fought a guy from there. But then also, like, there's a few from Toruna Penguins. In fact, I know a guy who just got his life membership, and it's definitely that part of that community. But Tassie, and that's proper rugby too. It's not league, it's union. And that's not like but it's not huge here.
No.
And so I don't think AFL football players get the ears as much as rugby players.
So if you've got cauliflower ears in Tassie, you probably don't.
Maybe Gox, but probably. And like one of my old bosses when I worked for the Department of Human Services, I had a meeting with him once for some reason. And I looked at him and I said, "Where did you wrestle?" And he looked at me, "What?" I said, "Where did you get that ear?" And he looked at me and said, "Where did you get that ear?" And then, but he played for Hobart Harlequins. He played rugby. And I said, I haven't played rugby since school. This came from wrestling. I always say wrestling. I don't know what jiu-jitsu is. But it was funny because we sort of caught it on. But he got it from being a scrum. You know.
And the two can go together too. We had one of the guys who was a CrossFit coach for us up at CrossFit Ballina, was also one of the local rugby coaches. And then he, you know, when they had a program where he'd bring them into the gym and we'd wrestle with them, and you know, it's like and it was just sort of tied the local rugby team in with CrossFit and Jiu-Jitsu, and it's just
I love it. I got a memory. You know, you get your annual memories up on Facebook. I got one in the other day. It was the guy that runs Van Diemen Kyokushin. Craig, who's an amazing guy, really nice, great for Golan. And he's the guy who really embodies everything that martial arts is. He came out of the Glenorchy Stags, out of that rugby world. And he, you know, the Kyokushin world. But the memory that came up was this picture where he's standing with me in a jiu-jitsu gi with one stripe on. And I'm standing in his gym in the other picture with my first Kyokushin belt. Before both of us got more injured and more things went wrong, we were training with each other. And it's pretty cool. But that was a pretty cool community crossover thing. Like, I really respect those guys for sure.
We actually had one of the gym I trained at up in Ballina after I closed my gym, Portal. They shared a space with local Kyokushin gym for, you know, in the early days, right at the start.
Hard as coffin nails, that long.
It's definitely. I think if I was going to do karate,
it's real.
It's a hard style.
I love sparring with them. It's great. It's really cool.
You can do that. I'll stick to rolling around on the floor.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Well, we've been talking for about 2 hours already.
Probably. So, probably should leave it there.
Yeah. So let's wrap it up for now. We can do another one sometime. But yeah, this has been good. This is the first time face to face. So it's always been by
Zoom.
Before. So yeah.
It's good. We get to sit together. It's really good.
Yeah. This is I like doing it this way. I mean, most of the other people have been out of town, but
even people from England and all over the place. So it's you can't always do it this way, but it's if you had the right budget,
we can't all be Joe Rogan.
No, we can't all be Joe Rogan. Plus, COVID's COVID, so you can't really do it. But
this has been good.
It's been
nice.
It is
chat. Thanks.
It is always good to have a chat. So
thanks for your time, and I'll get this up online soon.
Yeah, fantastic.
Cheers, mate.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.